News of the Battle of New Busan spread across the galaxy within hours. Every species in the consortium wanted to know about the mysterious human ship that had destroyed a Krethian fleet single-handedly. The victory was impossible, yet it had happened. Suddenly, humanity was no longer invisible. The consortium high command demanded that Daeho surrender the Iron Promise immediately. They claimed the ship was built using stolen technology and violated dozens of regulations. They said it was too dangerous to be in private hands and must be controlled by proper military authority. Daeho refused. He sent a simple message back. Humanity built this ship with our own hands using salvaged parts and forgotten knowledge. It belongs to us, not to the consortium. If you want it, come and take it. The consortium did not come. They were too busy dealing with the Krethian Empire, which was now advancing faster than ever. The loss of one fleet had not stopped them. If anything, it had made them more aggressive. They wanted revenge for the humiliation at New Busan, but something had changed across human space. People who had accepted their fate as second-class citizens were now asking questions. Why did they need the consortium to protect them? Why couldn't humans defend themselves? The Iron Promise had proven that human technology, when properly applied, could match anything the aliens had. Yuna's network began working overtime. She had been secretly connecting with other humans who believed in independence, who wanted humanity to stand on its own. Now those connections became critical. Hidden workshops across a dozen colonies began receiving technical specifications. Daeho's modifications, his hybrid systems, his integration techniques, all of it was shared freely. "You're making the ship's secrets public?" Jaewon asked in disbelief. "Any of our enemies could use this information." "Let them try," Daeho replied. "This knowledge should never have been hidden in the first place. Humans need to know they can build things that matter. Every ship we create makes us stronger." Bora worked with the network to distribute the information securely. She made sure every human colony received the data, hidden in commercial transmissions and civilian communications. The consortium never noticed until it was too late. Within 3 months, 5 more ships were under construction. They were not identical to the Iron Promise, but they used the same principles. Human frames combined with alien technology, creating vessels that were tougher and more adaptable than anything built by a single species. Admiral So-Yun became the public face of this movement. She formally resigned from the consortium navy and declared her loyalty to humanity first. Other human officers followed her lead. Within weeks, she had assembled a small fleet of volunteers, people who were tired of watching their species be treated as inferior. The consortium tried to stop this rebellion, but they were fighting a war on 2 fronts. The Krethians were pushing deeper into consortium space, and now they had to deal with humans who refused to obey orders. Some consortium species demanded that humans be punished severely. Others, seeing the effectiveness of human ships against the Krethians, argued for cooperation instead. The galaxy was fracturing, and at the center of it all was a mechanic who just wanted to build something that would last. The Krethian Empire, enraged by their defeat at New Busan, assembled a massive counteroffensive. They pulled ships from 3 different sectors, creating an armada that dwarfed anything they had used before. Their target was clear. They would destroy every human colony, starting with Earth itself. Intelligence reports showed that over 300 Krethian warships were heading toward human space. It was a fleet designed to end any argument about who was superior. The consortium navy tried to intercept them but was pushed back with heavy losses. Daeho received messages from across human space. People were evacuating, fleeing ahead of the coming storm, but there was nowhere safe to run. If Earth fell, humanity would be scattered and broken, probably forever. "We need to stop them," Hana said. She had joined the crew of the Iron Promise permanently, managing logistics and communications. "But we're 6 ships against 300. Even with the Cascade driver, those odds are impossible." "We don't fight them alone," Daeho replied. He brought up a tactical map showing the Krethian home system. "We cut off the head. We go straight to their capital and force them to recall their fleet." "That's suicide," Jaewon said. "Their home system will be the most heavily defended place in their entire empire." "Probably," Daeho agreed. "But it's also the one place they won't expect us to attack. They think we're desperate and defensive. They won't anticipate humans going on the offensive." Admiral So-Yun joined the meeting via video link. Her fleet had grown to 12 ships, a mix of rebuilt warships and converted civilian vessels. If we're doing this, we commit everything. No reserves, no backup plans. We either win or we die trying. That's always been the plan, Una said with a slight smile. The combined human fleet departed 3 days later. They called themselves the Rust Fleet, a name that honored their origins as discarded and forgotten things. 13 ships crewed by volunteers who had everything to lose and everything to prove. They used every trick they knew to reach the Krethian home system undetected. They traveled through unmapped routes, using gravitational anomalies to hide their signatures. They scattered their forces to look like random merchant traffic. And when they finally regrouped at the edge of the Krethian home system, the enemy had no idea they were coming. The battle that followed would be remembered for generations. The Rust Fleet hit the Krethian defenses like a hammer, using tactics that no proper military would consider. They targeted infrastructure instead of engaging warships directly. They used the Cascade Driver to create chaos in the tightly packed defensive formations. They adapted and improvised, changing their approach every few minutes to keep the enemy off balance. The Iron Promise led every charge, with Daeho coordinating the fleet from his captain's chair. He was not a trained military commander, but he understood engineering and problem-solving. To him, the battle was just another impossible project that needed to be completed. Hyunwoo and the fighter pilots performed miracles, keeping enemy ships distracted while the larger vessels repositioned. Bora hacked into Krethian communications, feeding them false information and creating confusion. Jaewon coordinated weapons fire across the entire fleet, ensuring that no shot was wasted. The Empress of the Krethian Empire watched from her flagship as these primitive humans tore through her defenses. She had been told that humans were weak, that they were barely worth conquering. Now she was watching her home system burn because she had underestimated them. When the Iron Promise approached her flagship, she tried to flee. Daeho fired the Cascade Driver one final time. The explosion consumed the Empress's ship and 15 others around it. The chain reaction lit up the sky above the Krethian homeworld. The remaining Krethian forces surrendered immediately. Without their Empress and with their capital in ruins, they had no will to continue fighting. They sent recall orders to all their fleets, ending the war in a single moment. The Rust Fleet had won, but at a terrible cost. 4 ships had been destroyed. Hundreds of crew members had died. The Iron Promise itself was barely holding together, its systems failing one after another. But they had won. Humanity had won. The consortium was forced to acknowledge what had happened. A species they had dismissed as primitive had defeated an empire that nearly destroyed them all. The political implications were staggering. New treaties were negotiated. Human colonies were granted full autonomy. The consortium transformed from a hierarchical empire into a true partnership of equals. Daeho returned to his workshop in the asteroid station. He refused offers of military command, political office, and corporate wealth. He just wanted to build things. Admiral So-Yun became humanity's representative to the Galactic Council. Jaewon led the new human space navy. Una expanded her network into the largest shipbuilding corporation in human space. 5 years after the war ended, a signal was detected from beyond the galaxy. Another species, one that had been watching the conflict with interest. They wanted to meet the humans, the species that had refused to rust in silence. Hana brought the news to her brother as he worked on a new ship design. "They're calling you," she said. "They want to meet the mechanic who changed the galaxy." Daeho looked up from his work, grease on his hands and a smile on his face. "Tell them I'm busy, but if they want to talk about ships, they can come to my workshop. I always have time for that." Outside, the construction yards of humanity stretched across the stars. Dozens of ships were being built, each one a testament to what could be achieved through persistence, innovation, and the refusal to accept defeat. The galaxy had learned a simple truth. Never underestimate someone who knows how to turn rust into iron, silence into thunder, and forgotten dreams into unstoppable reality. The journey to New Busan took 5 days. The Iron Promise moved through space like a ghost, using every stealth technique Jaewon knew to avoid detection. They passed by consortium patrol ships that never saw them. They slipped through sensor nets designed to catch anything bigger than a shuttle. The ship's hybrid systems made it difficult to track, mixing human and alien technologies in ways that confused standard scanners. Daeho spent most of the journey in the engine room, making final adjustments. Every system on the ship was pushed to its absolute limit. The reactor was running at 98% capacity, higher than it was ever designed for. The shields were drawing power from life support, making the air thin and cold throughout the vessel. But the ship held together, and that was all that mattered. Bora worked in the communications center monitoring Krethian transmissions. She had learned their language through stolen databases, and she translated their orders for the crew. What she heard was terrifying. The Krethians were not just attacking. They were planning to erase human colonies completely, to make an example of what happened to weak species. "They're calling us vermin," Bora said quietly. "They say humans are contaminating the galaxy with our primitive ideas." "Let them talk," Jaewon replied. "Words are cheap. Let's see how they feel when we hit them." On the third day, they picked up a message from New Busan. The colony was under siege. 47 Krethian warships surrounded the planet, bombarding the shields and destroying anything that tried to escape. The civilian government was begging for help, but no help was coming. The consortium had written them off. 47 ships, one of the crew members whispered. "We're just one ship. How are we supposed to fight that many?" "We don't fight all of them at once," Jaewon explained, bringing up tactical displays. "We use the Cascade driver on their flagship formation. If it works the way Taemin's notes say it will, we can take out 15 or 20 ships with the first shot. Then we use conventional weapons to clean up the rest." "And if the Cascade driver doesn't work?" someone asked. "Then we die quickly," Jaewon said simply. "But at least we'll die fighting." The crew worked through their fear by staying busy. Hyunwoo, a young pilot who had volunteered at the last minute, ran endless simulations in the fighter bay. The Iron Promise carried 6 small fighters salvaged and rebuilt just like the main ship. They were not much, but they would provide cover during the attack. As they approached New Busan, Yuna gathered the crew for what might be their last meal together. She had brought real food from Earth, not the synthesized rations they had been eating. There was rice, kimchi, and grilled meat. It smelled like home, like everything they were fighting for. "My grandmother used to make this," Yuna said as they ate. "She lived through the Earth-Vortan War. She saw our military destroyed, our independence taken away. Before she died, she told me to never forget that we're survivors. No matter what happens to us, we find a way to keep going." "To survivors," Daeho said, raising his cup. "To survivors," the crew echoed. They emerged from stealth mode 3 hours later, appearing on Krethian sensors like a demon from the void. The enemy fleet reacted immediately, turning their weapons toward this unexpected threat. Daeho watched their formations shift on the tactical display. They were professional soldiers, trained and disciplined. They would not underestimate an enemy just because it was alone. But they made one critical mistake. They stayed in tight formation exactly as their doctrine demanded. "Target the flagship cluster," Daeho ordered. "Bora, are you ready with the Cascade driver?" "Ready," she replied, her hands shaking slightly over the controls. "The weapon is charged and locked on target. Hyunwoo launch fighters. Keep them off us until we can fire." "Launching now," Hyunwoo responded. The 6 fighters shot out of the bay, their engines blazing as they accelerated toward the enemy line. The Krethians opened fire. Energy beams and missiles filled the space between the two forces. The Iron Promise shook as weapons struck its shields, but the hybrid defensive systems held. Alien technology mixed with human engineering created something stronger than either could achieve alone. "Shields at 70%, Jaewon called out. "We can take a few more hits, but not many." "Almost there," Bora said. 15 seconds to optimal firing range. Those 15 seconds felt like hours. More weapons struck the ship. One fighter exploded, its pilot dying before he could even transmit a final message. The lights flickered throughout the Iron Promise as power was redirected to keep the shields operational. "Fire!" Daeho commanded. The Cascade driver unleashed its energy with a sound like reality tearing apart. A beam of pure white light shot across space and struck the Krethian flagship directly in the center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the flagship's shields began to glow, brighter and brighter until they exploded in a cascade of overloaded energy. The explosion jumped to the next ship, then the next, then the next. It was exactly as Taemin's notes had predicted. Each ship's shields tried to contain the energy and failed, creating a chain reaction that could not be stopped. Within 30 seconds, 17 Krethian warships had been reduced to debris. The remaining enemy vessels broke formation, scattering in confusion. They had never seen a weapon like this. Their training had not prepared them for an attack that turned their own defensive tactics into a liability. Conventional weapons, fire at will, J1 shouted. The Iron Promise unleashed everything it had: missiles, energy cannons, railguns salvaged from 4 different species. The ship had been built as a hybrid, using every weapon system Daiho could integrate. Now all of them fired together, creating a storm of destruction that overwhelmed the Crethean ships. Yunwu and the remaining fighters attacked from the flanks, targeting damaged vessels and finishing them off. The young pilot flew like he had been born in a cockpit, dodging enemy fire and striking with precision. The battle lasted 40 minutes. When it ended, 47 Crethean warships had been reduced to wreckage. The Iron Promise hung in space, battered and scarred, but still functional. Its shields were down to 12%. Its ammunition was nearly exhausted, but it had won. On the planet below, 7 billion people watched in disbelief. They had prepared to die. They had said their goodbyes and made their peace. Now they were being told that a single human ship had destroyed an entire enemy fleet. Daiho slumped in his captain's chair, exhausted beyond words. His hands were shaking. His vision was blurry, but he was alive and his crew was alive and New Busan was saved. Bora was crying and laughing at the same time. Jaewon was checking casualty reports, relieved to find they had only lost 2 fighters. Yuna was already calculating how much ammunition they would need if another battle came. "Incoming transmission," Bora said, wiping her eyes. "It's from the Consortium High Command. They want to talk to you. Let them wait," Daiho replied. "First, send a message to New Busan. Tell them they're safe now. Tell them humanity protects its own." As the message was sent, Daiho looked at the tactical display. The Crethean Empire was vast, and this was just one battle. But it was a battle humanity had won. After 50 years of being dismissed and ignored, humans had proven they could stand against the strongest forces in the galaxy. The Iron Promise had kept its promise. Now the real work would begin. 3 years after Daiho first found the wreck, the galaxy exploded into chaos. The Crethean Empire launched its first attack, destroying 3 consortium fleets in a single day. The news spread like fire through every system. Species that had lived in peace for generations suddenly realized they were facing extinction. The Cretheans were different from anything the consortium had fought before. They were brutal and efficient, using weapons that tore through shields like they were paper. Their ships moved in perfect formation, overwhelming any defense with sheer numbers and firepower. The consortium military tried to respond, but they were too slow, too disorganized. Decades of peace had made them weak. Daiho watched the reports on his screen inside the asteroid station. Entire planets were falling. Millions were dying, and the consortium was retreating, pulling back their forces to protect the core systems. Human colonies were on the outer edge of consortium space. They would be hit first, and everyone knew it. "We need to finish the ship," Jaewon said. "Now?" "We're not ready," Daiho replied. "The weapon systems are only half installed. The shields need another month of calibration. We don't have another month. Look at the tactical maps. The Cretheans will reach the human colonies within 3 weeks." Daiho knew Jaewon was right, but admitting it felt like defeat. They had worked so hard and they were so close. But close was not good enough when millions of lives were at stake. Taemin had died 2 months earlier. The old man had pushed himself until his body gave out, spending his final days teaching Daiho everything about the ship's original design. Before he died, he had given Daiho a data chip containing encrypted files. "This is the secret," Taemin had whispered. "The real reason they built the absolute silence. Promise me you'll finish it." Daiho had promised, but he had not been able to access the files. The encryption was military grade, designed to protect classified information. He needed a hacker, someone who understood old Earth military systems. That was when Yuna brought Bora to the station. She was young, barely 20 years old, but she was brilliant with computers. She could break through security systems that most people could not even understand. When Daiho showed her the encrypted files, her eyes lit up with excitement. "Old Earth Navy encryption," she said, studying the code. "I've read about this, but never seen it in person." "Give me 2 days," she cracked it in 1 day. When the files opened, Daiho saw technical diagrams for a weapon he had never heard of before. It was called the Cascade Driver, and according to the notes, it was supposed to be the Absolute Silence's primary weapon. The Cascade Driver worked by creating a chain reaction through enemy shields. When it hit one ship, The energy would overload that ship's defensive systems and jump to the next nearest ship, then the next, then the next. In theory, it could destroy an entire fleet with a single shot. This is insane, Jaewon said, reading the specifications. This weapon was never tested. It might not even work. Or it might be exactly what we need, Daeho replied. The Creathians fight in tight formations. Their ships stay close together for mutual protection. The Cascade Driver was designed to punish exactly that kind of tactic. Can you build it? Daeho looked at the diagrams, calculating in his head. With the components we have? Yes, but it will take everything. We'll have to strip power from non-essential systems. Life support will be minimal. And if it fails, it might overload our own reactor. So we either die trying or die doing nothing, Yuna said. I prefer the first option. They worked around the clock for the next 2 weeks. Daeho assembled the Cascade Driver using parts from 6 different alien technologies. Bora rewrote the targeting software to work with modern sensors. Jaewon trained anyone who volunteered to crew the ship, teaching them basic combat procedures even though most had never been on a warship before. Hana came to the station with news from the outside. The consortium military had contacted her, asking about any hidden human resources. They were desperate, looking for anything that could help them fight the Creathians. I didn't tell them about the ship, she said. But Daeho, they're planning to evacuate the human colonies. They're giving up. How many people can they evacuate? Daeho asked. Maybe 30%. The rest will be left behind. That's 7 billion people, Yuna said quietly. They're writing off 7 billion lives. Daeho felt rage building inside him. This was what the consortium really thought of humans. They were acceptable losses, unimportant numbers on a spreadsheet. If Earth's military still existed, they would never abandon their people like this. But Earth's military was gone, dismantled by the consortium 50 years ago, except it was not completely gone. The Iron Promise existed, and if the consortium would not save humanity, then Daeho would do it himself. We launch in 3 days, he announced. Ready or not, the final preparations were frantic. They loaded the ship with as much ammunition as they could carry. They stocked food and medical supplies for a crew of 30, even though they only had 18 volunteers. They ran simulations of the Cascade Driver, but without a real test. They had no way to know if it would work. On the day of departure, an unexpected guest arrived at the station. It was Admiral So-Yun, the highest-ranking human in the consortium navy. She came alone in an unmarked ship, and she looked tired and angry. I heard rumors about this place, she said, looking at the Iron Promise. I didn't believe them until now. You rebuilt a warship without authorization. You're in violation of 17 consortium regulations. Are you here to arrest me? Daeho asked. No, So-Yun replied. I'm here to tell you that I wish I had 20 more ships like this. The consortium is abandoning the human colonies because they think it's not worth the resources to defend them. But I took an oath to protect our people, and I won't break that oath even if my superiors have. She handed Daeho a data chip. These are the current positions of the Creathian fleet. The main attack force is heading toward New Busan. If you're really going to do this, that's where you need to be. If I succeed, the consortium will want this ship, Daeho said. They'll try to take it from me. If you succeed, the consortium will have bigger problems to worry about, So-Yun replied. Show them what humanity can do and they'll have to respect us. Or at least fear us. Either way is better than being ignored. The Admiral left and Daeho gathered his crew. They stood in the main hangar looking up at the Iron Promise. The ship was scarred and patched together from a dozen different technologies. It looked like exactly what it was, a desperate attempt to build something from nothing. I won't lie to you, Daeho told them. This ship is untested. The weapon is untested. We're going up against a fleet that destroyed 3 consortium battle groups. Most of us will probably die. Nobody left. Nobody even moved. They all stood there waiting for him to continue. But if we do nothing, billions will die anyway. So we're going to New Busan, and we're going to fight. And maybe, just maybe, we'll show the galaxy that humans are not finished yet. The Iron Promise launched from the asteroid station, its engines burning bright against the darkness of space. Inside the ship, Daeho sat in the captain's chair and plotted a course toward the battle that would change everything. The salvage yard stretched across 3 kilometers of dead space, filled with broken ships and forgotten dreams. Daeho walked between the wrecks with his scanning tool in hand, checking each piece of metal for anything valuable. He had worked here for 12 years, and he knew every corner of this graveyard. Most ships in the yard were alien vessels. The consortium owned everything now. They were the rulers of the galaxy, a group of 47 alien species who thought they knew everything. Humans were just another species to them. Nothing special, nothing important. Earth had joined the consortium 50 years ago, and ever since then humans had been treated like children who needed guidance. Daeho hated that feeling. He hated being told that human technology was primitive and inefficient. He hated the way alien inspectors looked at his work and shook their heads, saying he should follow proper procedures. But most of all, he hated that they might be right. His communicator beeped. It was his sister, Hana. "Daeho, where are you? You have 3 ships waiting for inspection." Her voice crackled through the speaker. "I'm in Section 7, he replied. "Tell them I'll be there in an hour." "An hour?" "They've been waiting since morning. You can't keep doing this, then they can wait longer. I found something interesting." He heard Hana sigh on the other end. She was always cleaning up his problems, always making excuses for him. But she never told him to stop being himself, and for that he was grateful. Daeho stood before the largest wreck in Section 7. It was massive, easily 3 times bigger than any other ship nearby. The hull was covered in rust and damage from old weapons. Pieces of the structure floated around it, held in place by weak gravity nets. Most people would see garbage. Daeho saw possibility. He activated his scanner and pointed it at the ship. The readings came back slowly, processing through decades of decay. Then he saw the name on the registration. Absolute silence. His breath caught in his throat. This was a human ship, one of the old warships from before the consortium absorbed Earth's military. The absolute silence had fought in the Earth-Vortown War, a conflict that ended 60 years ago. Humanity had lost that war badly. The consortium had stepped in to stop the fighting, and in exchange, Earth had to give up its independence. All human warships were supposed to be destroyed or dismantled. This one must have been forgotten, left to rot in some corner of space until it was dragged here. Daeho walked closer, using his magnetic boots to climb onto the hull. He ran his hand across the metal. It was cold and rough, but underneath the damage he could feel the strength of it. Human ships were built different from alien vessels. They were heavy, tough, and designed to take punishment. Aliens built their ships with elegance and efficiency. Humans built theirs to survive. He spent the next 4 hours examining every part of the exterior. The weapons were gone, stripped away long ago. The engines were dead. The shield generators were missing, but the frame was still solid. The basic structure was intact. This ship could be rebuilt. His communicator beeped again. This time it was a video call. Hana's face appeared on the small screen and she looked angry. "Daeho, the inspectors left. They said they're filing a complaint. Do you know how much trouble this causes me?" "I'll make it up to you," he said, still looking at the ship. "But I need you to do something for me first." "What now?" "Check the ownership records for the ship in Section 7, grid reference 447. I need to know who owns it and how much they want for it." Hana's expression changed from anger to concern. "Why? What are you planning?" "Just check it, please." She disappeared from the screen. Daeho continued his inspection, crawling through a hole in the hull to see the interior. It was dark inside, and his helmet light barely cut through the shadows. The corridors were empty and silent. Everything valuable had been removed decades ago. But as he moved deeper into the ship, he found something that made him stop. It was the main reactor chamber, and against all logic, the core was still there. It was dead and cold, but it existed. Reactor cores were always removed from decommissioned ships. They were too valuable to leave behind. Someone had forgotten about this one, or maybe they thought it was too damaged to be worth salvaging. Daeho smiled. This was better than he had hoped. His communicator beeped again. Hana was back and she had information. The ship belongs to the Consortium Salvage Authority. They've listed it as zero-value scrap. You can buy it for the processing fee, which is about 15,000 credits. 15,000 credits. That was everything Daeho had saved over the past 5 years. It was supposed to be for a house or maybe starting his own shop. Hana would kill him if she knew what he was thinking. "Buy it," he said. "What?" "Daeho, no. That's all your money." I said buy it. "Put it in my name. Tell them I'm going to break it down for parts. This is insane. It's a wreck. There's nothing valuable left in it. Trust me, Hana, please." There was a long silence. Finally, Hana spoke again, her voice quiet. If you lose everything because of this, I'm not lending you money. I know. Thank you. That evening, Daeho went to visit his old friend Taemin. The elderly man lived in a small apartment near the salvage yard. He had been a military engineer once, back when Earth still had a navy. Now he spent his days drinking tea and complaining about the consortium. Daeho told him about the ship and Taemin's eyes went wide. The absolute silence. That ship still exists? The old man stood up from his chair, moving faster than Daeho had seen in years. I served on that ship. I was part of the engineering crew. Then you know what it can do. I know what it was supposed to do. Taemin corrected him. We never finished building it. The war ended before we could complete the weapons systems. The consortium made us shut everything down. But the frame is good, right? The basic design? Taemin nodded slowly. The absolute silence was designed to be modular. Every system could be replaced or upgraded. We built it to last forever, to adapt to any situation. It was going to be humanity's answer to alien superiority. Then help me rebuild it. The old man stared at Daeho for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had been waiting 60 years to hear those words. When do we start? 3 days later, Daeho used his salvage credentials to move the absolute silence out of the yard. He told the authorities he was taking it to a processing facility. Instead, he towed it to an abandoned asteroid mining station he had found years ago. Nobody came out here anymore. The minerals were exhausted and the station was falling apart. It was perfect. As the massive ship settled into the station's docking bay, Daeho stood and looked at it. This was crazy. This was impossible. He was one man with limited resources, trying to rebuild a warship that the galaxy had forgotten. But humans were good at doing impossible things. They had to be. Nobody else would do it for them. Daeho picked up his tools and walked toward the ship. There was work to do. 18 months passed like a fever dream. Daeho barely slept. He barely ate. Every moment was spent inside the ship, tearing it apart and putting it back together. His hands were covered in scars from sharp metal and hot welding tools. His eyes were red from staring at technical diagrams in the dark. But the ship was changing. The absolute silence no longer looked like a corpse. Daeho had stripped away all the dead systems and exposed the skeleton of the vessel. The main corridors were clear now, and he had restored basic power to 3 sections. It was not much, but it was progress. Taemin came to the asteroid station twice a week, bringing food and supplies. The old man's health was getting worse, but he refused to stay home. He would sit in the reactor room for hours, explaining to Daeho how the systems worked, how they could be improved, how they could use parts from other species to make the ship stronger. Human engineering is about adaptation, Taemin would say. We don't have the best technology, so we learn to use everyone else's technology better than they do. Daeho learned quickly. He started visiting black market dealers, looking for alien components that the consortium had banned or forgotten about. That was how he met Yuna. She operated out of a trading post near the edge of consortium space. Her shop was small and cluttered, filled with parts from 100 different species. Yuna was smart and careful. She asked questions before she sold anything, making sure her customers were not consortium spies. When Daeho first approached her, she was suspicious. "What does a salvage worker need with Vortan shield generators?" she asked. "A project," he replied simply. "What kind of project?" "The kind that's none of your business," Yuna smiled at that. She liked people who kept secrets. Over the next few months, she became Daeho's main supplier. She found him Kalari quantum processors, Tholen energy conduits, and dozens of other components that should have been impossible to get. She never asked what he was building, but Daeho knew she was curious. One day, she showed up at the asteroid station unannounced. Daeho nearly panicked when he saw her ship approaching, but it was too late to hide anything. She docked and walked into the station like she owned it. When she saw the absolute silence, she stopped and stared. "You're rebuilding a warship," she said quietly. "A human warship. Are you going to report me?" Daeho asked. Yuna walked closer to the ship, running her hand along the hull. "Report you? No, I'm going to help you. Do you have any idea what this means?" "It means I'm breaking about 40 consortium laws." "It means you're doing what every human has wanted to do for 50 years, she said, turning to face him. "You're telling the galaxy that we're not finished, that we're not weak. I've been waiting for someone like you." From that day forward, Yuna became part of the project. She brought more than just parts. She brought information about alien technology, about weapon systems, about things the consortium tried to keep secret. She had connections everywhere, and she used them all to help Dae-ho. The next person to join was Jae-won. He was a former consortium military officer who had been discharged for disobeying orders. Dae-ho met him in a bar near the salvage yard, and they got into an argument about human military tactics. The argument turned into a conversation, and the conversation turned into an offer. If you're serious about rebuilding that ship, you need someone who knows combat strategy, Jae-won said. I spent 10 years in the consortium navy. I know how they fight, and I know how to beat them. What makes you think I'm rebuilding a ship? Dae-ho asked carefully. Jae-won smiled. Because Yuna told me. She thinks you need help, and she's right. You're an engineer, not a soldier. You can make the ship fly, but can you make it fight? Dae-ho could not argue with that. Jae-won joined the project the next day. With Jae-won's help, they began designing weapon systems. The absolute silence was not just going to be a ship. It was going to be a weapon, something that could stand against the most powerful vessels in the galaxy. They worked on integrating alien technology into the human frame, creating hybrid systems that used the best of both approaches. The work was slow and frustrating. Systems that should have been compatible refused to work together. Power flows were unstable. The ship's computer core was too old to handle modern processing demands. But they solved each problem one at a time, learning and adapting as they went. Hana visited the station once, and she was horrified by what she saw. Her brother looked like a ghost, thin and exhausted. The ship looked like a monster, half-finished and dangerous. You're killing yourself for this, she said. Why, what's the point? The point is that someone has to try, Dae-ho replied. The consortium thinks we're nothing. They think human technology is garbage. I'm going to prove them wrong. And if you fail, if you die out here and nobody even knows what you were trying to do, then at least I tried. That's more than most people can say. Hana wanted to argue more, but she saw the determination in her brother's eyes. She knew that look. It was the same look their father had when he refused to give up on anything. So instead of arguing, she helped. She convinced her husband Kisu to provide funding through his business connections, hiding the money trail so the consortium would not ask questions. 2 years into the project, they achieved their first major success. The engines fired up for the first time in 60 years. The sound was deafening, a deep rumble that shook the entire asteroid station. Dae-ho stood in the reactor room with Tae-min, watching the power readings climb higher and higher. We did it, Tae-min whispered. The ship lives. Dae-ho named the ship Iron Promise. It was a promise to humanity, to himself, to everyone who had been told they were not good enough. The ship would prove that humans could build something great, something that would make the galaxy pay attention. But as the engines cooled down and the celebrations ended, Dae-ho looked at the readings and realized they were only 70% finished. There was still so much work to do. The weapons were not installed. The shields were not calibrated. The navigation systems needed complete replacement. And Taemin's health was getting worse every day. The old man was coughing more often, moving more slowly. He refused to see a doctor, saying he did not have time for that. He needed to finish teaching Dae-ho everything he knew. Yuna brought news from the outside world. The galaxy was becoming dangerous. A new power was rising in the far regions of space, a species called the Krethians. They were conquering systems and challenging the consortium's authority. Tensions were growing, and everyone could feel that war was coming. If war breaks out, the consortium will lose, Jae-won said one evening. They've been at peace for too long. Their military is slow and bureaucratic. The Krethians will cut through them like paper, and when they do, they'll target human colonies first, Yuna added. We're the weakest members of the consortium. Easy targets. Dae-ho looked at the Iron Promise, still unfinished, still incomplete. They needed more time, but time was running out.